Hello and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly, Director of Advanced Media Production at Cal State Long Beach. Today we'll be talking about utilizing the arts in the classroom as teaching tools. My guest today is Dr. Victoria Bryan. Dr. Bryan teaches in the Liberal Studies program. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Victoria.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start the conversation by talking about a course that you teach called Arts and Values. I know that in a previous conversation you told me that you didn't actually come up with the name of that course, but the name sticks, but you have identified some meaning for that title. We'll talk about the dynamics of the class a little bit more later, but first, what does that title mean, Arts and Values?
Thank you for the question, Dave. Yes, although it wasn't my title, it is a capstone class for future elementary teachers. And so I'm very pleased that the idea of arts and values are linked together, because I think that so often art isn't really valued in that way. So to me, arts are really being valued through this class, being seen to be an important part of what an elementary teacher needs before he or she is ready to go out and teach.
And let's talk about the dynamics of the class. Who takes the course and why are the students in that particular class?
These are students who are nearing the end of their preparation to become elementary students. And so, for the most part, my students are seniors. They will have had a couple of prereq art classes already under their belts, a music, a visual arts, and either a theater or dance. So then this is one of their capstones that they have to complete successfully before they're ready to go out and get a job.
So this is one of the last lines of opportunity for them to learn what it's going to be like when they become teachers.
That's absolutely right. And although I find that my students, of course, have done the prereq classes, I still find that these are mostly students whose own K through 12 education has been after Proposition 13, which was, of course, the beginning of stripping out much of art from our educational system. So in my experience, the vast majority of them don't have a lot of experience and don't have a lot of confidence in the idea of using the arts.
And so what are they learning in your class?
Well, the first thing I find I have to do is to try to overcome the barriers. If you just say the words theater or opera or visual arts to students who don't have a background in that, it's very intimidating and it can be very off-putting. They don't feel confident to think of using those. So the first thing I try to do is get them up on their feet, and rather than read about the theory behind it, actually get them to experience something. So I start off with theater, and I usually just begin with doing some theater warm-up exercises, the kinds of things that a group of actors would do to bring them together on the first day of rehearsals. Once my students have experienced that, then we talk about it, and I ask them to think about, what was that experience like? What did you get from it? If you use that with your own third graders, for example, what do you think they might benefit? How might they benefit from the experience of doing that? And then they start thinking about it and they think, oh, let's see, what did I do? Okay, yes, I was using listening skills. I was certainly using communication skills. I had to work collaboratively with my teammates, so learning to work effectively together with somebody. It was very good because when I said something or did something, I got a lot of positive response, so that kind of made me feel good. So we work through those kinds of things, and they can connect the experience with how that works, the benefits of that. That's one example of the way I would start into this, not so much from theory, but from a much more practical experience.
Well, being a TV host, I know from my own experience that things don't always roll trippingly off the tongue, as we say in the theater world. So at what point do these students graduate to doing Hamlet's soliloquy?
Well, probably not in my class, because actually what I say to them is, some of you, and there always are a few in the class, that will have had some really great experience for whatever reason. Maybe their theater was heavily involved in the arts, or maybe they happened to run into a teacher in their own elementary or middle or high school background who was really passionate about the arts. And so they know and they understand how that works. They may be very experienced. They may have a set of skills. Great. That's wonderful because they're already set. They're ready to go. But for those students who don't have that, I actually try to put their minds at rest by saying, I don't actually expect you to come out of the class being able to necessarily, paint like Frida Kahlo or perform a soliloquy from Shakespeare. It's not really about that because, frankly, in one semester, trying to cover all of the arts, I don't have the time to be able to bring them to that kind of artistic level. But what I can do, I think, is make them feel confident and give them experience in just how it works to think about any course subject. It could be one of the sciences, for example. If they're charged with meeting one of the standards, a goal, say, for their students to really understand and be able to tell you about the life cycle of a frog, for example. Perfect. Because just taking that simple thing, there's all kinds of things that we can use from the arts, not only to teach that, but to make sure it really sticks in their students' minds. I mean, for example, we could write a script and we could actually act out the dynamics of the life cycle of a frog, starting from, starting from tadpoles. We can be tadpoles. We can do, through movement and acting, actually illustrate all of those stages, whether it's a frog or a butterfly or whatever else it is, and enjoy doing it, have fun doing it, and that's how it really sticks in the mind. We could also approach it through the visual arts. We can certainly draw all of those stages. So there would be, many ways that we could use the arts in that simple instance.
And just to stay with the Shakespeare reference for a moment, what you're really telling us is that all the world's a stage, in a sense.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that you have to be able to write in iambic pentameter, for example.
That's exactly right. And so it's breaking down those barriers for my students. And then I always ask them at the beginning of the class, there's usually 30 of them in the classroom. I say, how many of you would identify yourselves as artists? And usually there's a definite, that kind of a movement in the classroom. Maybe one or two brave souls might put their hand up. But for the most part, they don't. And then I say, okay, now imagine walking into a second or a first grade classroom and asking the same question. How many hands do you think would go up? And of course they always say, well, all of them. Because all of my students at that age would see themselves as creative artists.
So what causes that repression of the arts?
That's my next question to them. And when I ask them to think about that, it's, oh, well, I actually remember when a teacher told me that my drawing was no good. And I remember learning that there was a certain way that art had to be, and mine didn't look that way, or I couldn't sing. I remember somebody telling me just to sit in the back row and mouth the words, that kind of thing. And I think to myself, that's just amazing. So we've actually taught them that they are not creative artists and shouldn't consider themselves as such. So then we talk about that. What does that tell you for your own future classroom experience? How are you not going to be that kind of teacher, but to be the kind of a teacher who encourages and builds confidence in your students so that they continue to think of themselves not just as artists. It's not about whether you're going to become an artist or not, but do you have access to the uses of the art forms and the ability to be creative, to use the art forms for the gifts, for the skills and the tools that they bring to us and they add into our lives.
And I think an important point here is that the arts are not just a separate subject matter, and that's what you're talking about, is incorporating the various aspects of the arts that may be helpful as teaching tools to make subjects come alive for the students, because that's the bottom line. We need to make the subjects come alive for the students.
That's exactly right. We also talk about the barriers to teaching the arts in the classroom, and there are many. Teachers today really don't have the time, the resources, the money isn't there to just allot time to teach the arts, how to play the guitar, how to paint, how to sculpt. That would be great, but generally, in most cases, the opportunities are very limited for that. But if we can't do that, what we can do is just what you said, use the arts as an effective teaching tool to really engage students in interactive learning in any subject material, doesn't matter what. If it's math, if you want to teach fractions, great. I can see a great movement piece, a dance piece that allows students to experience what it is to be a fractional part of a whole by being in a group and then dividing up. Lovely way to have them experience it in their bodies.
And so what you're telling me is that it's not just a matter of reading, writing, and arithmetic, as we've been told. We need to get back to the basics. But you're saying the basics don't have to exclude the arts.
Exactly right. I think that you've really made an important point when you talk about the arts being thought of as separate from the rest of life. It's often as though they're marginalized, that you have to go to a certain kind of a place and you have to be a certain kind of a person to be able to fully appreciate and or use the arts. And to my way of thinking, from my own experience, that's just really not the case. And so that's the approach I take in my class, and I try to help students see that, to recognize already how much they already engage with the arts just on an everyday basis. And as they think about it and gain a little more experience, how much more of that they can use, they can integrate into their own classroom teaching practice.
So it's a process of discovery for the students that you teach in your classes, and then they also go out and create their own sense of discovery in their own classrooms.
That's exactly right. And I also, as well as helping them experience the arts themselves and build their confidence, I also help them connect into resources in the community, because each community is full of people whose whole sort of reason for going to work every day is to provide arts educational experiences for schools and students. And most often my students don't know how to interact with that to get the most for their own students. So I have an assignment, for example, whereby they go out and they identify and research and actually go and observe something working in the community, either students going to, for example, the Long Beach Museum of Art or MOLA, or artists coming into the classroom and doing work with students in classrooms. I have my students observe that, assess it. How do you see that working? What does the teacher think about it? Is it working towards the standards? And then they provide a report back to the rest of their classmates, so that by the end of the semester, each student walks away with the beginning of a resource directory of arts programs, great resources that are absolutely available, sometimes even free, and just there to be requested.
A networking opportunity, to be sure.
Definitely.
We're going to continue this conversation in the next segment. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment, and when we come back, we'll talk about how Victoria became involved in the arts in her own situation. Stay with us. There's a world of opportunity available through the College of Continuing and Professional Education at Cal State Long Beach. Does your career involve legal work, law enforcement, fraud investigation, or crime scene analysis? You can increase your skill level and enhance your career by enrolling in the Basic Applied Forensic Science and Crime Analysis Certificate Program. For more information, contact the College of Continuing and Professional Education at Cal State Long Beach. Welcome back to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly. My guest today is Dr. Victoria Bryan. We're talking about utilizing the arts in the classroom as teaching tools. And Victoria, before we left, you were talking about the many networking opportunities that exist for teachers that are beginning their careers and need some resources to go to. I'd like to talk for a moment about the fact that art is something that's really at the core of our being in many ways, through the need to express ourselves. And we can go back to 20,000 years ago and see cave paintings in France. We can go through Egypt and see hieroglyphics, which is a form of writing, which is expression. And we also in Egypt, if we want to include architecture as one of the arts, as well as an engineering science, we see the pyramids, which we still are fascinated by, and we're so fascinated by it here on campus, we have our own pyramid.
Yes.
So if you could just kind of wrap that around for me in terms of why are the arts such an essential part of who we are?
Yes, that's another subject that that we talk about in the classroom. And when I ask them to think about it, my students certainly think about the benefits of arts, that arts offer the ability to express yourself. Sometimes you can get clear on something that you feel that you can't necessarily put into words, but you might be able to approach it more easily through some artistic form. You might be able to think it through by painting, by writing poetry, by journaling, all arts expressions that help us get clear on what's going on inside ourselves. I also talk about the fact that we might not think of it as art per se, but simple things like when we get up in the morning and decide what we're going to wear, we're actually putting together colors and clothing that is really a costume. It expresses an aspect of ourselves, how we feel today. So it's more than just, what's clean in my closet. It's actually a choice that we make, and we, in a sense, express ourselves to the world through that choice. So all of the things that we enjoy, whether it's listening to music, having the ability to create playlists now. So in a sense, we are our own curators, aren't we? With being able to curate our own arts experience much more easily through the technology that we have available.
And what you're doing in your class, in many ways, is giving people license to explore that which is already within them.
Yes, absolutely. Especially for those students who may have learnt through outside interaction that they don't think of themselves as artists. You're quite right. I'm trying to free that up so that they can consider the part that art plays in their lives, as well as the part of them that responds to the world in the way that an artist does, the way an artist looks at the world or thinks about the world, using creativity to interact and engage with the world.
And we don't have to be connoisseurs of any particular form of art in order to enjoy it. I think that's also important to know too. You don't have to be an expert. You can just enjoy the experience.
That's what I say, because so often people think that if they're not expert, if they can't paint a recognizable portrait, for example, then they shouldn't be able to use art. They should not be allowed to pick up a paintbrush. But of course, that's not the case.
Right. I want to talk now about your own experience with the arts and how you became so involved in the arts. I know you had a certain passion when you were young, and that passion was theater. Tell us about that.
Yet fortunately, I'm very happy to be able to say that my whole professional life has actually been engaged with the arts. I've always somehow managed to make my living in something that is arts-based, which has been wonderful. I suppose it started when I was a child. Very luckily, my father decided to move us to Hong Kong. He got a job out there, and so I actually grew up in Hong Kong.
But you were born in London?
I was born in London. And I think that any time you move to a completely different culture, you become immersed in a culture and you see things, you notice things more than you might if you just stay in the place where you were born.
What did you learn in Hong Kong?
Well, so because I think I was aware in that everything looked so different, so nothing was familiar, so you notice things more. I would hear music that was unlike anything I had ever heard, and I think that's one of the beauties of being in a totally different culture. You notice things more, and that makes you curious, and so you follow that and you try and find out what's going on. So I actually remember one day, and we were out shopping, just regular shopping, and I heard this music unlike anything I'd ever heard, just turned around a corner, and there in an open-air setting was a full Chinese opera that was being played out over, I think it was 5 days, just there in the midst of the market. And so it was, for a 7 or 8-year-old as I was then, it was a great illustration of, wow, there's all this art around us if we just are curious and look at it, look for it.
And you also ended up at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London?
I did. I had the chance to attend that school, which was more than a little intimidating when you go in through the front door and you look up at the list of all the very distinguished theatre people who have gone through that program before. But it was a great experience, very, very exciting. And I was able to use what I had learnt when I went back to live in Iran. I had lived there for a couple of years before, took a break, went to London to theatre school, and then back to Iran, where I was able to work in educational television.
Let's talk about that. You were in Iran. This was, we need to point out that this was prior to the overthrow of the Shah, which
Indeed, it
occurred in
was.
1979. So you were there prior to 1979. And you were involved in Iranian television.
That's right.
What were you doing and how did that happen?
Yeah. I was able to get a job working on educational television. Actually, just by luck, happened to know somebody who was already working in that program, and so got an introduction and got a job, which was great. And the whole purpose of the program was to teach English through a series of different educational teaching programs for English at different levels. At that time, the Shah wanted people to learn a second or a third language so that they could go abroad for graduate study and bring that learning back for use in Iran. So he was looking to build the sort of educational resources within his country. So sending people abroad to bring the knowledge back was his way to achieve that. So we worked with the educational TV station in Iran to develop these programs. And I think what I learned from that was that the goal was for people to learn English. Instead of just buying more textbooks, it was a rather creative approach to solving the problem. There weren't enough teachers in the country to meet those language needs at the time. So using a form of the arts, scripting and acting series of TV programs was a creative way of accomplishing that goal. So yes, it could have been done many other ways, but the way that seemed to work best was a very creative one, using the arts. And so I was, I had a foundation in that idea from that experience, I think.
And what else did you learn from that experience, living in that culture and working in the television industry there?
Goodness, it of course gave me the opportunity to travel around the country, because we would go to different parts of the country to film different segments on location. So again, the opportunity to be in a culture that was very different than anything I had experienced to that point. And just that idea of being in a different environment, and how much you learn about another culture through its arts. You know, as you do when you travel, you know, what do? We go and see things in other countries that we might not be so likely to go to in our own backyard, right? So we learn a lot about a culture through its arts, and I certainly had that experience throughout Iran. Fell in love with the culture through its poetry, its art, its architecture, everything about the culture.
But you also then got a PhD from the Drucker School of Management.
Yes.
Now, how did you transition from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art to Iranian television to a PhD in management?
All right, the short version of that is that after Iran, two of us, my partner in starting up a theater company venture, and I came back to Southern California because it looked like a time and a place of great opportunity. This was in 1978, 1979. And so we put some ideas into practice. Don LaFoon, who was the other half of this venture, had done educational theater for children in Iran. I had done educational television. We took what we had discovered and built that into an interactive theater company here based in Southern California. So we did touring plays for students in classrooms, and we did a lot of drama therapy in places like battered women's shelters, recovery programs, juvenile hall, senior centers. So using theater for very specific purposes, very much as a tool or a set of tools. So we started that company called Stopgap. We ran it for 20-some years, and after that experience, I decided that I really wanted to understand what we had done in a different way, and so that's what took me back into academia, so that I could do some analysis on what that meant, this interaction between theater and its audience. that's what took me into the Drucker School of Management, where I was actually able to get my PhD in audience studies. So really understanding what that relationship is between theatre companies and their audiences. So there is a thread, although it might not seem so clear at first glance.
Right. We're starting to run out of time here, but in the couple minutes that we have left, I wanted to ask you about that dissertation that you must have put together about that relationship between the audience and the theater. What conclusion did you come to?
Well, I did a big empirical study. I actually worked with 17 theaters here in Long Beach, and through them had access to their audiences to run a big survey, audience and theater survey. All of that, there's a lot of data there, but all of it boiled down to a very simple thing. The biggest predictor of satisfaction for a theatre audience is not the type of play, not even the quality of play, as best I could ascertain it. It is the relationship that the audience member feels to the theatre that they go to see something at. So it all came down to the relationship. A little bit different by different age group, but basically about the relationship. And I think that's a really important thing for artists to keep in mind, that it's not only about what you do, the quality of the artwork itself, that this is it doesn't happen in a vacuum, really. It's, the audience experience of the artwork is critically important, is central to what the artwork is. And therefore, that relationship between artist and audience is a very, very important one. And now that I'm on the board of directors for the Arts Council of Long Beach, that's a very central thing for us to be working with, that idea of how can we be the facilitator to be a useful part of helping that interaction happen more and more effectively throughout Long Beach.
Well, thank you for being a facilitator in the arts, both at the university and throughout the city. We have run out of time, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today for this edition of Talking Points. Join us again soon for another episode. Until then, I'm Dave Kelly. Have a nice day.